What happens when the spotlight fades and the noise grows quieter? At 73, Steven Seagal's life feels less like a non-stop action sequence and more like a reflective journey shaped by ambition, discipline, and consequence. Once one of Hollywood's most recognizable action stars, he built a career on calm authority, controlled movement, and an aura of quiet intensity. Yet fame is rarely permanent, and success often carries unseen weight. As trends shifted and attention moved elsewhere, Seagal's life entered a different phase, one defined not by box office dominance, but by adaptation and introspection. Behind the tough characters and martial precision stood a man navigating time, reputation, and relevance. His story is not a simple rise and fall narrative, but a complex arc of reinvention. It reveals how public acclaim can magnify strengths while also exposing limitations, and how endurance often matters more than applause once the lights dim. Early years and the search for strength. Steven Seagal was born in 1952 and spent his formative years between Michigan and California, growing up with health challenges that set him apart from other children. Asthma and physical vulnerability could have encouraged retreat, but instead, they sparked curiosity about control, discipline, and inner strength. Martial arts became a pathway toward confidence rather than aggression, teaching balance rather than dominance. As a teenager, Seagal discovered Aikido, a discipline emphasizing redirection and precision, values that resonated deeply with him. Unlike more force-driven styles, Aikido demanded patience and mental clarity, shaping both his physical approach and worldview. These early years were less about fame and more about identity, about learning how focus and repetition could transform limitation into purpose. Long before Hollywood entered the picture, Seagal's path was defined by persistence, suggesting that his later success was rooted in discipline, cultivated far from cameras or acclaim. Japan and the discipline of immersion. Seagal's decision to travel to Japan marked a defining chapter in his life, setting him apart from many Western martial artists of his era. Immersing himself fully in Japanese culture, language, and tradition, he pursued mastery rather than recognition. Training in Aikido demanded humility, patience, and respect, especially as a foreigner navigating a deeply rooted cultural space. Over time, Seagal earned credibility not through claims, but through consistency, eventually becoming one of the first non-Japanese individuals to operate an Aikido dojo in Japan. These years refined his skills and broadened his worldview, reinforcing the idea that mastery requires submission to learning. The experience shaped how he carried himself later in public life, contributing to the calm demeanor that would become his signature. Japan was not a stepping stone to fame, but a crucible that forged discipline, confidence, and a sense of purpose beyond borders, entering Hollywood on his own terms. When Steven Seagal transitioned to Hollywood, he did so without following the traditional actor's path. Initially working as a martial arts instructor and security professional, he existed on the industry's margins, respected more for skill than celebrity. His breakthrough came not from chasing auditions, but from being noticed by those intrigued by his presence and authenticity. His debut film introduced audiences to an action hero unlike the norm, controlled, reserved, and precise. Rather than explosive theatrics, his performances emphasized technique and restraint. This difference resonated with audiences seeking something new, and success followed quickly. Seagal's rise was swift, fueled by a distinct identity that blended martial arts credibility with cinematic storytelling. For a time, his calm authority stood in contrast to louder action archetypes, proving that understatement could command attention. Hollywood embraced him not because he fit the mold, but because he disrupted it. Fame, image, and the weight of persona. As his popularity grew, Steven Seagal's public image expanded beyond film roles into a carefully constructed persona. He became associated not only with action films, but with philosophy, discipline, and a global outlook. This blending of real skill and cinematic myth created fascination while also inviting scrutiny. Over time, the boundaries between performance and personality blurred, placing pressure on him to live up to an image larger than life. Fame amplified both strengths and contradictions, rewarding confidence while magnifying missteps. Maintaining such a persona required constant reinforcement, and the expectations that came with it were demanding. This phase of his life illustrates how success can complicate identity, turning individuality into obligation. Seagal's experience highlights a broader truth about celebrity. When public perception hardens into legend, it can become difficult to evolve without resistance. The image that builds success can also limit freedom to change, creative exploration, and shifting tides. By the mid-1990s, Seagal began exploring creative paths beyond acting, seeking meaning outside traditional action formulas. He ventured into directing, music, and storytelling that reflected personal interests rather than pure commercial appeal. These efforts revealed a desire to expand identity and engage audiences differently, even when critical reception was mixed. At the same time, Hollywood itself was changing. The rise of large franchises, digital effects, and ensemble casts reduced demand for solo action stars rooted in physical realism. As mainstream opportunities narrowed, Seagal adjusted by working on smaller projects that allowed him to remain active. While these films lacked earlier visibility, they reflected perseverance rather than retreat. This period underscores how adaptation becomes essential when industries evolve. Success, once achieved, does not guarantee permanence. Seagal's response was not withdrawal, but continued engagement, illustrating resilience in the face of shifting cultural currents. Reinvention beyond American cinema. As Hollywood attention waned, Steven Seagal found new platforms on the international stage. His martial arts reputation and public profile opened doors abroad, where cultural exchange and symbolic roles offered renewed relevance. These ventures allowed him to reframe his identity, not solely as an actor, but as a global figure engaging with different traditions and audiences. While reactions varied, this phase demonstrated adaptability and strategic reinvention. It reflected an understanding that influence does not exist in only one place, and that global engagement can extend a career in unexpected ways. For Seagal, international involvement became both opportunity and reinvention, offering a sense of purpose beyond box office metrics. This chapter of his life illustrates how relevance can be redefined, especially for figures willing to step outside familiar arenas. Reinvention, while often misunderstood, can be an act of survival as much as ambition. Aging, reality, and adjustment. With time, the physical demands that once defined Seagal's career naturally shifted. Aging required adjustment, not denial. Rather than retreat entirely, he adapted how he worked, choosing roles and appearances that acknowledged physical reality while preserving presence. This stage highlighted the human aspect behind the action star image. Discipline does not eliminate time, but it can shape how one responds to it. Aging reframed success from dominance to endurance, from spectacle to sustainability. Seagal's later years reflect the universal challenge of reconciling identity with change. Strength became less about performance and more about acceptance. This transition is rarely celebrated, yet it is one of life's most demanding lessons. In continuing to appear, create, and engage on his own terms, Seagal demonstrated that longevity often depends not on resisting change, but on adapting to it with pragmatism and self-awareness. Legacy after the applause. Steven Seagal's story is ultimately about complexity rather than conclusion. His early films left a lasting mark on martial arts cinema, introducing audiences to a style rooted in control and discipline. Beyond entertainment, his visibility helped bring awareness to Aikido and alternative expressions of strength. His journey also reflects the challenges of fame, the cost of persona, and the necessity of reinvention. At 73, his life stands as a reminder that public recognition is fleeting, but impact can persist in quieter forms. Behind the legend is a human narrative shaped by ambition, adaptation, and reflection. His legacy is not defined solely by peak moments, but by the full arc of engagement, success, challenge, and continuity. When the spotlight softens, what remains is not perfection, but persistence. And in that persistence lies the truest measure of a life lived publicly, yet navigated privately.